This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, gang? Happy Tuesday and welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. We got a fun one today. Mike McIntyre, the Winnipeg Free Press, is going to be jumping on with us. And first up, we'll head to Edmonton and take a look back at Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final and where the Edmonton Oilers go from here, down 2-0. Remis and I will chop it up and talk about the game as well right off the top. And then a little later on in the program, going to be a real fun conversation. Winnipeg's Tyler Mislawchuk getting ready for the Paris Olympics as Canada's #1 triathlete. I believe top 12 in the world or so. He has been everywhere getting ready for Paris. He's actually just overcoming an unfortunate injury that he's been was a bit of a setback. But we're going to catch up with Tyler, talk about his training, and looking ahead to representing Canada and, of course, Winnipeg and Manitoba at the Summer Olympic Games. We will get to our horse picks a little later on. NBA Finals in the Coolbet Lines, a little Blue Jays, but the big story today, Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final as well, and we'll get to this in just a few minutes. A little tidbit, if you will, not much, but Darren Dreger did talk Nikolai Ehlers last night on SC with Jay Onright, so we'll play that and get a little bit of the latest on the Ehlers situation for the Winnipeg Jets in the offseason. Huge thanks to all of our sponsors, and do have to thank Rolly's Transfer, Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, Consolidated Supply, Canadian Club, Little Brown Jug, Manitoba Battery, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Next Door at 116 Sherbrooke, and Hoagie Boys, the Winnipeg Goldeyes, Assiniboia Downs, and Breezy Bend Country Club. We'll get to a why not question of the day. And a little bit later on, fill you in on the new Winnipeg Sports Talk content, CFL 110, debuting tomorrow at 3 p.m., right after our regular Winnipeg Sports Talk show with myself and Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press, presented by Garage Living Winnipeg. Let's get Remo in here and get this show on the road. What's up, dude?
I'm feeling good. I'm enjoying all the conversation surrounding the Stanley Cup Final after Game 2. I still think, Edmonton's got a shot here, but we're having Tom Gazzola on, coming up, and he brought it last night on the post-game show. I was sitting here laughing. Just a lot of not even the on-ice stuff, but you have, first of all, there seemed like a lot of injuries yesterday. Luosterainen, Nurse, Barkov hurt, Fogel's getting kicked out, guys are getting put in chokeholds.
Kulikov's nuts.
Oh, yeah, Kulikov's nuts. If you listen to the start of the show yesterday, I certainly knew what he was feeling there. But, what
that must have been tough to watch, Reem. That must have been tough to watch.
Yeah, Charles Barkley dropping an F-bomb with Kyle Bukauskas. We had a lot of great moments. And there was also a game, and Florida's up 2-0. So I think the Stanley Cup Final living up to the billing of the series here.
Just quickly, before we forget, the Barkley interview with Bukauskas, was pure comedy. First of all, like last year, he said he looks like Canada's Tom Brady. This year, he told him that he's much better dressed this year. And Charles is a big hockey fan, talked a little bit about, the game or whatever. And then, yes, did accidentally drop an F-bomb, apologized to the kids out there, and then said it was freaking awesome a couple times. But I have to admit, I saved the biggest laugh for at the end of the interview. You know what he did? I got to give a shout out to Rod Black. I don't know if he's ever been on television in Canada without shouting out Rod Black and Christine Simpson and Don Cherry. Rod Black, who is, to my knowledge, never worked for Rogers ever. Don Cherry, who was unceremoniously bounced from Rogers earlier. All I could think about was the executive producers or the bigwigs cringing as Barkley signed off to Canada at the end of a memorable Stanley Cup interview.
Yeah, well, first of all, Bobrovsky was that good, so you couldn't describe. I don't blame him for slipping in an F-bomb there on national TV, describing Bobrovsky's play in Game 1 because he was incredible. So I mean, hard to hold back, and I know Charles likes a sprinkler too, and he's been riding Edmonton, so I'm sure he was not happy with the result of game 1, but he does give a shout out to Rod Black every time when we asked Rod, or you did on the show, was it last week? So check that out. It was Tuesday's show at the end. Great conversation with Rod, or that might have been two weeks ago. Either way, they have a long history together, Charles and Rod Black. So yeah, that was a great segment there. Certainly a viral moment for Sportsnet at the Stanley Cup Final.
Well, there was a few viral moments last night, and not all of it was great for the NHL. I mean, I joked about Kulikov's jewels. I mean, that was dirty as hell from Carrick. I have a feeling there'll be plenty of $5,000 fines handed out. The question is, will there be any games handed out? And the guy I think that in normal circumstances would be most facing a suspension is Leon Draisaitl for the elbow on Alexander Barkov. And I don't know, as we go through the day, I'm kind of not thinking he's going to be suspended. I think with the situation the Oilers are in, and again, this should not... the fact that the Oilers are down 2-0 in this series should not affect whether he is or is not suspended. But I kind of think it will be. If the Oilers were to lose Leon Draisaitl in game number 3, this could be a real short series, although Dries needs to be better. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And I was talking about it with Dusty on the Lock Shop. We'll bring Tom in and get his take on it. All I could think about is the fact that he's probably not getting suspended, and it brings me back to the Scheifele hit on Jake Evans, and I still can't believe he got 4 playoff games for that. Suspension, sure, but just how much they brought the hammer down on Scheifele and the Jets compared to everything else that happens in the playoffs. It's still to me, and I'm sure to you, doesn't entirely compute. But there was lots going on right now. A 5-minute knee major in the first period. There was the hit to Barkov that knocked him out of the game. That certainly is the biggest story, I think, heading into game 3. And Maurice, for his part today, said that he hasn't gotten worse since yesterday, so that's a good thing. And they're hopeful that he will be good to go. But certainly, I mean, there'll be no assurance of that until Barkov's actually on the ice taking a face-off or, playing in the game. I'm sure he'll be a game-time decision as the one-upmanship. And then the other thing that actually did set me off a little bit last night, Reem, and again, I have no skin in the game. I feel dirty cheering for the Oilers, but I just find myself kind of hoping that they win. McDavid's unbelievable. The guy probably deserves one. Aaron Ekblad coming from behind and putting Evan Bouchard in a real rear naked choke and having him tap out was so over the top. Like, I can you ever remember seeing anything like that before?
A guy in a choke, or a guy tapping out?
Getting tapped out in a scrum. Here it is. He's literally tapping. For folks that are watching with us on YouTube, like we were talking about this on the Lock Shop, and Eric said, and I actually thought this too. What would have happened if he just sort of went limp and fell to the ice? Like, this was not anything between them beforehand. He wasn't even looking, and Ekblad just came in from behind, put the choke on him, and then started applying pressure to the point where Bouchard was actually tapping out. Like, listen, I know the elbow is going to be talked about, the NHL player safety. Listen, there's not going to, well, who knows? Maybe they'll give him a $5,000 fine. Again, it doesn't matter. That's peanuts to any one of these guys. It's almost humorous that they hand out for their salaries $5,000 fines, which literally mean nothing. But I would be blown away if there's not some sort of a memo to both teams saying, you just simply cannot do this, because it seemed to be way over the line of normal stuff in the scrum. And to me, rear naked chokes is MMA, not hockey.
Yeah, well, hockey has a lot less rules when it comes to fighting than MMA. MMA has weight classes. Huss, they don't have that in the NHL. MMA also has rules that you can't punch a guy in the back of the head. We've seen that pretty routinely in the NHL over the years. So, I don't know, just going up to an unsuspecting player and putting him in a rear naked choke for the Stanley Cup period, that's fair game. And I'm looking at this picture, Huss. This doesn't look cinched in. I think he could have got out of this. You're going to have Tom on. Tom's got some strong... Tom brought it last night. I mean, Bouchard's got it... Although his head looks pretty red there. He does look like he's about to pass out, but I don't know. He could have made more of an effort to try to get out. He doesn't know how to slip out of a rear naked choke. That's not part of their training, Huss. So...
I need to work on that tomorrow, before game 3.
I think you got to lean forward and have him come over the top for a standing rear naked choke. I'm not an MMA expert. I've watched a bit, but this is quite the scene. And yeah, you never seen a guy tap out before. And I don't know, they should have just given the Stanley Cup to the Panthers after that. That was them throwing in the towel for games 3 and 4, right?
Oh, the chat is Ishaboy Bruce. That's me and my buddies after drinking a case of beer and watching UFC. And then our pal Gitch, Sean Lishka, with an early why not question of the day. Would you rather be licked by Marchand or choked out by Ekblad? What a choice. What a choice. Listen, the Oilers are up against it. They do have 2 home games coming up. They're without Darnell. Well, we'll see whether they're without Darnell Nurse. So ask Tommy if they've got any update. He only played 4 minutes in the game last night, which meant that Evan Bouchard played 30 minutes. And I have to admit, as much as we're joking about, all the nonsense that took place in and around the game, to me, Remis, that was a game that was essentially in overtime in the third period. Said it to the guys I was watching the game with. The next goal wins at 1-1. And Bouchard, and I just have to think this is somewhat fatigue, physical fatigue and mental fatigue. The pizza that he threw out to Rodriguez that ended up in the back of the net for the winning goal was so devastating. And listen, there's giveaways, there's mishaps, there's turnovers that happen over the course of these playoff games, but the stakes are so high. I know a very different play, but it kind of reminded me of the Sandberg turnover in, game 3 or 4 of the Vegas series last year. They just were not able to come back in Florida, the defense that they're playing right now. I mean, just not giving up any grade A scoring chances at 5-on-5, period. So we'll get to this with Tommy. The Oilers need a lot more from a number of guys in their lineup. But hey, you win game 3, it's series on. We'll see what we can do. So more on the Cup final coming up in a few minutes. We'll get to this with Mike a little later on. But Darren Dreger was on TSN last night with Ehlers, and we'll play the clip. I mean, this is there's no breaking news in this, but what I think is important for people when they're listening to this, in particular when you're listening to Dreger on TSN speaking about the Winnipeg Jets, know that over the years, he has been the guy that the Jets have often used, Kevin Cheveldayoff presumably, have often used to sort of get messaging out to the league, but also their own fan base. And listen, I think the Ehlers conversation is one that, he's a player that is incredibly popular, that has been very productive. I mean, there are warts in his game, absolutely. But he's a guy that scored 25 last year without one on the power play. He has consistently been a guy that, is able to generate offense. And he would be a big hole in the lineup. We know what the contract situation is. He's got 1 year left. So let's play this and then we'll kind of talk about it. Here's Dreger on the latest on Nikolai Ehlers with the Winnipeg Jets heading into July 1st, at which point he would be eligible to sign an extension or going into the last year of his deal.
I believe that Nick Ehlers likes the idea of staying in Winnipeg to the conclusion of his contract. So he's going into the final year of his deal. Do I think that Ehlers wants to extend in Winnipeg? I don't get that sense. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's unhappy. And there's a lot of change, and there will be more change in Winnipeg. That just happens organically, automatically. You've got a familiar face in Scott Arniel, who's now the head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. But his name has been out there. I just didn't randomly throw that out there the last time we visited. But I also, I'm not going to sit here and say that I think that it's a front burner topic for Jets management either. They've got some things that they're going to have to consider and look at. You look at their pending unrestricted free agents. Sean Monahan was an excellent fit in Winnipeg. Is there a chance that they can convince him, if the dollar is right and the term works, to stay? Well, you can continue to sign contracts and extend players. It's not an unlimited salary cap.
Right.
So I think that Cheveldayoff would be willing to listen to interest. I'm sure that there is interest in Nikolai Ehlers.
All right. So obviously there'd be interest in Nikolai Ehlers, and that was sort of, again, mentioned at the end. But what I took from that, Remo, was the sort of admission that, hey, you can't extend everybody. There is a salary cap. You've got guys coming up. And I think that is a bit of a tell that a number of these guys that are UFAs might not be back with the Winnipeg Jets. And for that, I kind of think about the blue line with Dylan DeMello and with Brendan Dillon. And here's the other thing. Pagnotta's source, when talking about his report last week that Ehlers didn't intend to sign an extension, was I believe the quote was, a well-placed source close to the Winnipeg Jets. This isn't from Ehlers' agent or Ehlers himself. This is sort of coming from the team. So, and maybe this is just to soften the blow for fans that are big fans of Ehlers in particular, that'll be disappointed if he's not here. Making sure that everyone knows that it doesn't sound like he's very interested in signing an extension. You can debate amongst yourselves why that may or may be. We'll talk about it with Mike a little later on. But also not a front burner issue. I mean, the front burner issues is, do they do something with either Dylan DeMello or Brendan Dillon? Obviously the draft coming up, but also floating out to the rest of the league that they're willing to listen on 27. Chevy's been very, very patient in the past. I mean, and it doesn't seem like this is something that absolutely has to get done right now. But as we've mentioned before, if this drags into training camp and the regular season, it certainly becomes a story that we're following and talking about all season long. And there's sand in the egg timer that'll be done at the end of the season. And I don't think Ehlers is a player that they'd like to see walk for nothing. But if you have a good season, if he is playing well, if you look to be a playoff team and he's a big part of your success, it also makes it a lot tougher to trade him in and around the deadline, even if the ask and the return might even be better than you could get right now at the draft.
Yeah, that's going to be in a tough spot if they hang on to him and you're in a playoff spot. Traditionally they haven't lost players of his caliber for nothing. Even Andrew Ladd, who was the captain, it was easy. You were out of the playoffs. You could trade him. But they're being in this spot where you had a great season last year and you're in another playoff spot come the trade deadline, really tough. So he said it wasn't a, quote, front burner topic. So they have some other, other things that are ahead, maybe addressing some of the free agent, players who aren't going to be on the team July 1 on defense. So, maybe they'll let it play out and wait for an offer. We know that Cheveldayoff has done well when it comes to making deals. See the Dubois trade just almost a year ago. So we'll have to wait and see. And I'm sure he's, again, not going to give him away Sure, Montreal would love a player like Ehlers for, a bag of pucks like we heard.
Josh Anderson, a third rounder. Is there any other bad contracts on them? Who was it? I got to shout out Nick Lyman from Top Line. He had a tweet on the weekend when they were talking about when they're talking about Cap Friendly being bought. He's like, oh, great. Now, how will Habs fans be able to put together trade packages for the top player on other teams involving Josh Anderson, a second-round pick, and something else? I've been laughing about that for a while, and because it takes us back to 2 years of Dubois drama here in Winnipeg and everything that we heard from Montreal that, of course, didn't happen. Listen, we're going to be talking to Tommy G, handsome Tommy Gazzola in Edmonton on the Cup Final. We'll get back to more of these Jets conversations with Mike McIntyre in a little bit. But I do want to let everybody know, if you missed it yesterday, we've got new content coming to Winnipeg Sports Talk, a weekly show with all the top stories from around the Canadian Football League, featuring maybe the best in the biz when it comes to covering the Canadian Football League, our guy Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. Yes, Huss and Hammer with CFL 110. It debuts tomorrow right after WST at 3 p.m., and it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. We've been waiting to launch this for a while. Hammer's actually going to be joining from Ottawa, getting ready for the Bombers and Redblacks on Thursday night. So we'll get to the big stories coming out of week 1, a look ahead to week 2. And Hammer's always got some great takes. So looking forward to that. And CFL 110 is brought to you by Garage Living Winnipeg. We are so excited to be working with a friend that many of you know, Pat Kanuga, who was a longtime Big J over at CBC. He left the Mother Corp earlier this year, and Pat is like a vintage car guy. He has been around. He's got some beautiful vehicles and spends lots of time in the shop and in the garage. And this is just a perfect connection for him. If your garage has become a dumping ground or you've got no room for your car because of the clutter in there, Garage Living can help. You would not believe what they are doing to garages these days. Pat and the gang at Garage Living Winnipeg specialize in gorgeous polyaspartic floor coatings, premium metal cabinetry, slat wall, and storage racks to organize absolutely everything in your garage to create beautiful, clean, functional garages that not only look amazing, but add value to your home. In fact, the garages are so nice that these guys are doing. I think a lot of individuals are spending as much time as they can there, bringing their buddies over to watch the game in. It really is phenomenal, folks. Get over to Garage Living. You can find out more on that. Garage is made for living. And Pat, the guy you want to talk to, is at 204-999-1234 to set up a free in-garage consultation. But 999-1234, our pal Pat, a big welcome aboard to Garage Living, and thanks for their support of CFL 110, which begins tomorrow. Speaking of supporting WST, our pals at Rolly's Transfer ready to get you moving this summer. If you're planning a move, well, why don't you use a company that's family-owned and operated for 60 years in Manitoba and become the most trusted name in moving in Winnipeg and southern Manitoba, with extensive logistics businesses that takes them around the province on a daily basis. Rolly's Transfer has flexible routes, times, and the best way to save you money if you're moving out of the city. Not to mention everything here in Winnipeg. For your next move, go to Rollies.com. They've got a beautiful brand new website. There's a request a quote feature at the top right. Let them know when you're moving, what you're moving, where you're going. They'll turn it around quickly with a very affordable quote and get you moving. For more on your next move, use Manitoba's most trusted name in moving services. For more and your ability to request a quote, pop by and see them at Rollies.com. Not too nice outside right now. A little bit more rain coming and major irrigation needs for a lot of people here in Winnipeg and Manitoba. If you need irrigation or irrigation systems, Consolidated Supply is the spot for that. Not to mention artificial turf. The leaders in golf carts is the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba. and other great options for your property, including hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchens. And of course, they're the leaders in small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see Consolidated Supply at the showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. And hey, for all those tools and toys you're using this summer, you got to make sure you're powered up. And Manitoba Battery has been powering our summers for years, now with 2 locations in Winnipeg. Donnie and the gang, the original spot over on Logan Avenue, and now with the new location on Dovercourt in the south end of the city. At Manitoba Battery, you can shop local, keeping your money in the province, get the best prices in town, beating the pants off the big box stores. And in addition to that, they'll deliver it to you for free anywhere inside the city of Winnipeg with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. Give them a call or go online to manitobabattery.com and let Donnie and his great team power your summer. All right, let's welcome in the handsome one, Tommy Gazzola. I'm sure it was a hot one on the EST postgame show last night after the Oilers drop a 4-1 contest and fall 2-0. Let's bring Tommy in now to Winnipeg Sports Talk. Tom, what's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm still salty, Huss. A lot of bad takes last night on the postgame show. I got a little angry, and I thought maybe it was me after I said my Serenity Nows and I decompressed a little bit. And then I popped on to our station, and the Smash Hit Nielsen show was on. And I could feel and sense Dusty starting to build up. And then finally, Dusty actually had to pop off himself because although he was dealing with different bad takes, he was dealing with a plethora of them. So people are freaking out around here, rightly so. The team's down 2-0 in the Stanley Cup Final. But man, oh man, I was talking with Remo right before I hopped on, and I couldn't handle it anymore, Huss. Like, I was just like, come on, you guys. What are we complaining about here?
Are we saying hockey fans overreacted? You've got to be kidding me. We've never seen that before. Hey, the stakes are high, emotions are high, both in the game and amongst fan bases, and you know that'll bring out the best and worst in many people. We'll get to the bad takes in a bit. Let's focus on the good takes. What was your takeaway from last night's game? We know that the Oilers probably deserved a better fate. They did deserve a better fate in game number 1. Mm-hmm. A very different game last night, and a game that, credit to the Florida Panthers, they did not give the Oilers almost anything at 5-on-5.
Very true. And then even despite this, Edmonton held the lead for a good chunk of that game, and they scored an ugly goal by Matthias Ekholm. He basically shoots it at Sergei Bobrovsky, and it kind of pops through his pants and through his wickets and into the net. So you take the bounces that you're given or that you create, and then they sat back. And good on the Panthers, Huss, for forcing Edmonton, for controlling a lot of the pace in that game. It was basically a flip of what we saw in game 1. Despite that, Edmonton still held the lead. And the Oilers were on their back foot for the majority of that game. And you could just sense like impending doom, and they were bending, but not breaking. They could barely get any shots. It was Florida coming after them in wave after wave. And then a nice zone entry and a quick knuckle puck beat Stu Skinner from Nico Mikkola. And then that kind of turned the tide and gave the Panthers the momentum and confidence they needed, that they knew they were back in the game. And then in that third period, I mean, the dam just broke, and Edmonton couldn't contain Florida. It couldn't really get much going offensively. Yes, they got a few more shots. Yes, they pressed when they were down. But, I mean, Florida played that game to a T, and Edmonton, walks away with a 2-0 deficit in the series. So things got a little rowdy at the end, and, people have their opinions on what they thought was the downfall of the Oilers. There are many things, and I know we're going to break it all down. But, yeah, Florida was just a really good team. Connor McDavid summed it up nicely. He said, Florida elevated its game. They went up a level. Edmonton didn't. Simple as that.
I'm feeling for McDavid right now. And again, I said this on the Lock Show, but it feels somewhat dirty cheering for the Oilers. But I mean, there's one team or two. I'm close with you guys. I know it'd be a heck of a lot of fun around there if they get the job done. And I do have an immense amount of respect for those star players on that club. He was flying yesterday and trying to do everything. But when the Oilers have been at their best and their most successful, they haven't needed to lean on Connor for 26, 27 minutes a game. They've been getting more from other guys. And Dusty dropped this on me. I couldn't believe it. Only 3 forwards with shots on goal last night. 3 from McDavid, 2 from Draisaitl, 1 from Zach Hyman.
Yep.
You're not beating a team like the Florida Panthers with only 3 guys literally doing anything offensively.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a great stat, and it's indicative of the night that we saw last night in South Florida. But you go back to game 1 and the Oilers were flying. They peppered Sergei Bobrovsky. Bobrovsky played great. Yes, you could say the Oilers got goalied by Bobrovsky. Sure. You could say, why didn't the Oilers elevate the puck on Bobrovsky in game 1? Absolutely. And then when they did get those opportunities, Zach Hyman skied one into the netting, and then Ryan Nugent-Hopkins sailed one over the net. Yes, there were some posts. Even last night, the Oilers hit the post a couple of times on the man advantage. But, you know, I'm watching the series and I'm going, all right, it's kind of slipping out of the Oilers' hands, but I don't think it is gloom and doom, in all honesty, Huss. It's one game at a time. We've heard players say momentum doesn't carry game to game, but you could tell that Florida's starting to feel good about the way they're playing, and they should, because they have the experience. They were on the other end of things last year against the Golden Knights, but that doesn't mean that this series, then the Oilers have to concede the series. They can come back home, play a good game on Thursday, try to replicate what they did in game 1, maybe score, adjust where you put the pucks on Bobrovsky, and you could be talking about a 2-1 series going into Saturdays. So, there is full-blown panic. Yes, the Oilers have some issues that they need to take care of, especially on the injury front as well. There's some questions there. And then strategy-wise, they need to figure it out, because there were times last night where you're like, boy, Edmonton's kind of out of its league in this one. And that's a kudos and a testament to how good Florida can be. But that's not to say that Edmonton can't elevate its game as well.
No, you know what? Listen, it's a good point. And I think they absolutely can. I think there's a ton of players that have another gear. And even the top players, like we're going to get to Draisaitl in a second, assuming he's in the lineup and able to play in game number 3. He was the first one to say he needs to be better.
Yep.
And then including a bunch of other guys coming along with him. I will say this, very impressed with what McDavid had to say after the game. And, you know, it's easy to forget the depths of where this team has been recently this season. And I'm sure if you told Oiler fans that in the second week in November, don't worry, this team's going to be in the Cup Final and they'll be down 2-0 with 2 games at home, anyone would have taken that. And I think that they've shown that at times they absolutely can play with this team. Mm-hmm. It has been amazing. And listen, Bob deserves a ton of credit. He has been phenomenal. He won game number 1 for them. He didn't last night, though. And that is what the Oilers need to acknowledge and, you know, and get back and do a number of things better and match. We knew that Florida was going to be tenacious and really relentless in so many ways that they play. Mm-hmm. Credit to Paul Maurice and for getting the buy-in and for the players for doing it. But it also breeds a special kind of nasty. And we saw it last night from both teams. What did you think about the Draisaitl hit on Barkov? I don't think I need to ask you what the folks in the EST chat thought. I'm sure it was borderline. I had a friend that was listening to Stoff call the game, and he was listening to it. So he goes, so what was that hit? Stoff basically said that Barkov was faking. I sort of laughed. Hey, you know what? God bless home radio broadcast. Mm-hmm. But listen, if this happens in the regular season, he's gone for a couple games, I would say for sure. It doesn't sound like that is going to be the case, and that is very good. But Barkov's availability, a huge story, and Draisaitl as well. I mean, how did you see that play happen?
At first, I was like, "Oh, good hit," and then you saw the replay, and you see the bit of the chicken wing that Draisaitl sticks out there, catches Barkov on the chin, and I'm thinking to myself, "Well, it's the playoffs. You're mad. You're losing. You know Florida's controlling the game. Their arguably best player is vulnerable, and you take advantage." So in a situation where it's the Stanley Cup Final and you're doing everything you need to do to win the damn trophy, I get it. And, you know, we had people complaining about the Evan Bouchard being chokehold by Vlad. I popped off on that.
Put me at the front of the list. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, teed off on that because we had some absolutely ludicrous takes. Anyway, let's talk about the Draisaitl thing. So he took a shot where he saw an opportunity to. Was it dirty? Absolutely. Was it smart? Absolutely. Will he get penalized? We shall see. As far as I could tell, like so far, nothing, which Edmonton gets away with one if that is the case. Like I thought for sure last night during the post-game show that there would be a fine that we would be talking about today. So
there's going to be a few $5,000 invoices thrown out from last night.
Exactly. Game. But this is the Stanley Cup Final. Crap like that happens. You see guys take shots when they get opportunities. Draisaitl did it. If you have a chance to take out the other team's best player and you can kind of mask it as best as possible so that you don't penalize your own team, he did get a 2-minute penalty on that one, by the way, then you win. You come out ahead. And we don't know the status of Barkov. I know Maurice spoke post-game, and I think he did speak earlier today, and they're going to reassess Barkov tomorrow, and I'm sure we're going to hear an update on him on game day on Thursday. But I mean, he popped him in the jaw pretty good. And I don't know if it's a jaw situation. I don't know if it's a concussion situation. We could speculate all we want, but I'd
say it's concussion just because of what Maurice said today. He said it's not worse today than it was yesterday, and that's a good thing. And I mean, if you got a broken jaw or cracked or something, it's not something that's going to get worse. Concussions do. So I think it was, I mean, we're talking about a head injury here that, again, they've got to be careful for. But, I mean, you're playing for the biggest trophy in the game. If he's able to be out there, he will.
Yep.
But don't think that the gamesmanship from Pomo is going to end. He will be a game-time decision. He'll be doubtful. We're going to know when they drop the puck if 16 is out there with the C on his chest, if Barkov is going to be there. And
Big Oprah Winfrey guy, too. I didn't know that about Maurice. Big Oprah Winfrey guy. Surprising. You learn something new every day.
Yeah,
brilliant.
He was, but he was pissed afterwards. I mean, I heard it described as a joyless press conference. You know, I think Remis has this clip. We should play this for. So just to preface this, he was giving them nothing, as opposed to his 13-minute soliloquies that he'd been dropping for most of the playoffs after they win games. He was very stern. He was short. And I think most of it had to do with the hit on Barkov and the status. If they're without Barkov, that could be series changing. I don't think there's any doubt about it. He is their best forward, their best player, and they need him. So to lose him for half of the third period, he was happy that they won the game. But he had been asked a few times about how he felt about the hit, and he wouldn't go there. And then he was asked for, I don't know, the third or fourth time in a different way, and this is what Pomo had.
Stay in the same row. Go ahead.
Paul, I do want to ask you about the evolution defensively of this team since you've arrived, but just quickly, because I think you're holding back. How do you feel about the hit on Barkov?
This isn't the Oprah Winfrey Show. My feelings don't matter.
Okay.
I mean, Remis, that is like what? Where's that on the Where's that on the Pomo scale? I mean, we've seen a lot of pressers from him. I mean, he is locked in as much as any player in this series. I'll tell you that much.
Look at his face. He says it so seriously and sternly. It was so well done. Yeah, we talked about all the viral moments from the game. We forgot to mention Paul Maurice's postgame. It's just become so routine. And yeah, an Oprah Winfrey reference here.
Who had Oprah catching a stray in the postgame from Paul Maurice on their Stanley Cup bingo card? I didn't. But Tommy, yeah, I mean, listen, he was hot about it. I would suggest that there are some people on the Oilers side that were a little bent out. But the thing about the Oilers was, like, they got nasty as well. We talked about what happened with Draisaitl. I mean, Carrick sticking Kulikov in the nuts is just such a cheap shot. And him looking around like being surprised that he was getting penalized or anything after that. And listen, that's something the Florida Panthers sitting there sort of laughing, holding themselves off. That is one of those plays that, you know, you realize that you've got a team very frustrated and you have them beaten. And that was what that showed. But you brought up the play. And we'll get to Bouchard actually on the ice and what he did. But the Ekblad rear naked choke coming from behind. I mean, Bouchard is just standing there. There's a scrum. And to have a guy come around, put him in the rear naked choke to the point where he's tapping out and not able to breathe. I've watched hockey for a long time. I can never remember seeing anything like that. And to me, as bad as the hit on Barkov is, and I know they're trying to get headshots out, the visual of that was absolutely Bush League. And I'd be stunned if not only he doesn't catch a 5K invoice, but that there is some sort of memo reminding everybody taking part in this series that this is the National Hockey League and not the UFC. And MMA tactics will not be tolerated.
I'm surprised you're taking that side of it because I thought that it wasn't that bad. I'm sorry. Like Evan Bouchard tapping out instead of trying to fight him back is what I went off on yesterday.
Have you ever been in that situation? Like there's not a lot that you can do.
Huss, you squirm or you go dead. Okay? You squirm or you go dead. Yeah. Like
it's close to
like
it.
Go there and go like this, Mr. Referee, and I'm not taking it. I'm just saying, like, I didn't think it was that bad. I watched it over and over again because I was like, people were texting into the post-game show saying, oh my God, did you see what Aaron Ekblad did to Evan Bouchard? Guys, that is that screen grab right there that we're staring at. That's the worst of it. Aaron Ekblad is not a tough NHL player. Evan Bouchard is not a tough NHL player. They're two big men, okay, that can handle themselves. They play in the National Hockey League. They're hockey players. They've dealt with stuff and crap on the ice like this. I think that this is being blown out of proportion. Now, if his airwaves were being compromised, then do something about it because clearly the linesmen, unlike what they normally do, didn't jump in this instance.
Well, they were busy with other guys. I mean, this is a guy that's just taking advantage.
He had him around the neck. I've seen worse in junior hockey, in pro hockey. Like it was for 2 seconds. And I'm not defending Aaron Ekblad. I'm not saying what he did was right.
Yes, you are.
Yep,
that's exactly what you're doing.
But it's not as bad as people are making it out to be. And Evan Bouchard tapping. Guys, like, come on. This is the Stanley Cup they're playing for. The Panthers clearly are being the hammer, and they're turning the Oilers into the nail. And that's an instance of that. So people were like, oh, that was so egregious. That needs to be disciplined. On the postgame show, they said that was almost as bad as Sam Carrick giving Dmitry Kulikov a little howdy-doody to the Twig and Giggleberries. That was almost as bad as what Leon Draisaitl. That was worse than what Leon Draisaitl did to Sasha Barkov. No, he grabbed him around the neck for 2 or 3 seconds and then let him go. Like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, Zach Hyman came in there and basically went to Ekblad, let him go. That's how that ended.
You're going to kill him. We're going to have a dead man on the ice.
I don't understand when it became okay to, like, be like, oh, that's fine. Stop doing that, sir. Please stop doing that. Like, defend yourself. This is the Stanley Cup Final. I know he surprised you. I know it's like getting sucker punched, but you still have the chance to fight your way out of it or just like go limp and make it look worse than it is.
This is the only way that we can adjudicate this. I'm going to come out to Edmonton at some point this summer, and on the Nielsen show, I'm going to put you in the rear naked choke, and we're going to see the levels of fight back and how it works. Do I get the tap out? Or does Tommy Gazzola put the reversal on the Huss and turn things around? I can't.
Huss, you literally have a weapon in your hands that is a hockey stick. You have 2 fists, and you've got an idiot behind you choking you. Do something about it. Do something about it. That's all I'm saying. And then I'm not endorsing or condoning what Ekblad did. I would have liked to have seen him fight, and I don't know if his airwaves were compromised. I'm sure they were. But man, like just where people are coming at with these takes, I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me, you guys. This is the Stanley Cup Final. This screen grab is the worst portion of it.
People are loving this. People are loving this in the chat. Well, the one thing I'll say about Bouchard, and listen, I get why they would try and, give him the business and target him a little bit.
Of course.
With the loss of Darnell Nurse, he played 30 minutes last night.
Yes.
And listen, I said to the guys that I was watching the game with, this is when it was 1-1 early in the third period, this is a next goal win situation. And Bouchard, I mean, the pizza that he gave up on the Rodriguez goal was an egregious, brutal turnover. I kind of feel like that was the fatigue setting in on Bouchard, both physical but also mental with what that he was being put of. He played over 30 minutes last night in a 60-minute game. And, that's what happens when, you are leaning on a player that certainly traditionally is not, the best defensive player to do so much. And I'm not sure, what's the latest on Nurse? I mean, is there any optimism that he'll be able to play? I mean, what did he have, 3 shifts after the first period? He had 4 minutes in the game?
Yeah.
That can't be a good sign.
It didn't look good. He went back to the room a couple of times down the tunnel, took a couple of seconds to break some stuff in the tunnel. TD Force, the head athletic therapist, had to get out of the way. Not a good sign. And I knowing Darnell Nurse, watching him for a decade, when he's a tough guy. Like, he is a tough guy, and he can play through pain. He played with a torn hip flexor in the postseason not long ago. Something is seriously bothering him and compromising his ability to play clearly. And the latest we got is, Chris Knobloch had a Zoom call today before they flew out from Florida and said that he was going to meet with the team medical staff to figure out what was going on with Darnell Nurse. But if that's any indicator last night, where he plays 4 minutes, had 3 shifts after the initial injury, or wherever he tweaked whatever began to ail him, I would say that he's probably not going to be able to go on Thursday night. And
Cody Ceci back to save the day?
Well, I mean, they don't have Troy Stetcher available to them. He had ankle surgery. The other defenseman that's been a regular with the main group skating has been Phil Kemp. And he played 2 minutes in Montreal as a forward earlier this year.
I have never heard of Phil Kemp.
Yeah, well, he's been a good soldier for the organization for a long time. And that's the only other DMAT. So Cody Ceci, if Darnell Nurse is that banged up and can't go, Cody Ceci would go back into the lineup. You know what it would do too, Huss? And I threw this out there on EST today, is it would get Kulak or Broberg, because one guy's been playing on the right side. Both guys are left shot. Broberg went to the right side yesterday. It would get them on their proper side of the puck defensively, being left shots. And those two have been pretty good this postseason. Broberg has been a pleasant surprise in the playoffs coming in that Dallas series. It would get Ceci back in. Desharnais was okay last night. And maybe, because Darnell Nurse has not had a good playoffs, maybe it would actually be a blessing in disguise. Because, again, I'll reiterate, Darnell Nurse has not had a good playoffs. He got called out heading into Game 4 against Dallas. He was short and curt with the media. I get it. He had his back against the wall. He went out and had his best game of the playoffs that night. Since then, it's kind of been a steady decline. And to the point he gets banged up, and like, having Darnell Nurse at 50, 60% is not a benefit to your team in the Stanley Cup Final if you got a healthy guy who, yes, did not have a particularly great game, has not had an excellent postseason, that being Cody Ceci. But I think he gives you more than Darnell Nurse if Darnell Nurse is at 50 or 60%.
Were you surprised that Knobloch benched him? He had never been a healthy scratch as an Edmonton Oiler. I mean, I'll say this about Knobloch, and I thought that he was maybe going to be a little overwhelmed in the Final Four moving forward when, you're up against DeBoer and Lav and Pomo. A guy that's never even been through an NHL training camp, but he's pressed all the right buttons. And listen, I know you're going to rub some players the wrong way when you make a move like that, but it was a ballsy move, I thought, by Knobloch to sit CC up there. And tell you what, if he comes back in game number 4 and plays better when they really need him in the absence of Nurse, which is expected, he'll look even better right now. But it comes down to every single player on that team needing to get, I would almost say, significantly better outside of the top players that just need to have something go in for them.
That's fair. Absolutely. Everybody needs to put on their work boots and get going because it's slipping away from them. Absolutely. I'll just add this to the defense thing and CC being sat out and Nurse playing. Darnell Nurse in game 1 played the least amount of minutes out of any defenseman for the Oilers that night. Less than Philip Broberg, less than Brett Kulak, less than Cody Ceci. He played just over 16 minutes. I think that's indicative of something. Also, if you look at the body of work Darnell Nurse has put together this postseason, it's not good. There's a reason why fans were complaining about him going into Game 4 against Dallas. There was a reason why articles were being written about him going into Game 4 against Dallas. Yet, were there some hit pieces? Sure, yes. But his game, his body of work this postseason has not been standard Darnell Nurse. Darnell Nurse is a good defenseman. Is his contract an issue? Yes, sure. But we're talking about winning the Stanley Cup here. And right now, the money shouldn't be the thing we're talking about. We should be talking about level of performance. His level of performance has not been up to his standard, which is actually a good NHL defenseman. There's a reason why he got that contract. But in this playoffs, he has not been good. He hasn't even lived up to his own standard of being a solid NHL defenseman. So that's why I thought going into Game 2, like, Darnell Nurse is a leader on this team. He wears an A. He's part of the core. That's why he didn't get sat, I think. And I think Cody Ceci was the guy that had to get the seat in the press box. Now, this opens up potentially an opportunity to reassess that. And maybe the injury to Nurse, if it is severe enough, keeps him out. You get Ceci back in there, and then you get two guys in Kulak and Broberg on the left side playing where they're supposed to, where they're comfortable. And if they continue to provide solid play on the back end, eliminate mistakes, alleviate a guy like Evan Bouchard and Matthias Ekholm having to play 25 plus to 30 minutes a night, that could overall have a good effect on the club, potentially. We'll see what happens. Again, they need to reevaluate Nurse in his situation. We're not getting much information from the Oilers, but Nurse has had he's struggled this postseason, and he's had a tough go.
Hey, one more for you. Yeah. Did Blame the Goalie guy show up in the post game last night?
No, he was on the morning show. he was
like, if anyone's hanging this on Stuart Skinner, they are on another planet right now. Yeah. They've scored 1 goal in 2 games. I mean, to say this has been on. Listen, Skinner playing the way that he has since he got out earlier of the, since he was benched for the backup and Pickard in the Vancouver series has been something else. I mean, played great against Dallas, and I think he's been fine. He's been good enough to win if everybody else did what they need them to do, and they're just not quite there yet. So day off today, tomorrow, big practice day. We'll hear from the coaches, find out a little bit more about where things go from here. And listen, I know there's been a lot of WSTers that have been popping in on the post game, but you've got a lot more too. Oil Stream, and are you doing pre-games as well for the show, for the games?
Oh yeah, pre-game and post-game. It's been fun, man, but some post-game takes, and I'm glad we're getting more viewers and listeners, and it's a testament to what EST and WST have been able to do. But yeah, yesterday it was like, whoa, where are some of these takes coming from? And I know that some people are a few libations deep, but man, oh man, like I had to take a couple of deep breaths and have a delicious 6 o'clock lager just to calm down before I left.
I know the hair always looks good, but you might need to wear a helmet on Thursday night for some of the takes, depending on what happens in the game.
Oh,
but again, win, and it's 2-1. You got another home game, and it's series on. But we are in must-win territory for the Edmonton Oilers. Cannot wait for Thursday night. Tommy G, thanks for doing this, buddy. Say what's up to the fellas.
Will do. Thanks, Huss.
Good stuff. There's Tom Gazzola. Give him a follow on Twitter at Tom Gazzola. And if you want more on the Cup Final, head on over to Edmonton Sports Talk before and after every game. Tommy, as usual, will be manning the ship. Mike McIntyre is coming up with us in a few minutes. Have to thank our friends at Princess Auto for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Cannot wait to get back to Princess Auto Stadium a week Friday, Bombers and Lions. And don't forget, for every Bomber game, 2 hours beforehand, the Princess Auto Tailgate Zone opens up. $3.50, popping hot dogs, $5 beers, entertainment, inflatables, place to go, whether you're 6 or 66. And, of course, Princess Auto also bringing you the big Canada Day festivities, July 1st at Princess Auto Stadium, completely free. Wonderful day for the entire family, all afternoon, inflatables, food trucks, entertainment, and then the main stage gets going with performances beginning at 3 p.m., headlined by Doc Walker and the Sam Roberts Band, fireworks at dusk. It is great to be able to celebrate Canada again and do it with all of you. Princess Auto Stadium, July 1st. So mark that down, and we will see you there. Speaking of Princess Auto Stadium, I know there's quite a few individuals that probably smartly took Friday off after last Thursday's game, probably because they knew they were going to be cheering on the Bombers and having a few Canadian clubs. Of course, Canadian Club is the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and was in high demand through the north end zone during a few walks that I did at the game last night. Of course, in addition to CC and the entire Beam Suntory family of spirits available throughout the stadium, don't forget Canadian Club and Ginger Ale, also available in cans. Great drink for the summer. You can pick that up at Liquor Marts, but also at your local beer vendor. Canadian Club, look for the CC display the next time you pop in to your local Manitoba Liquor Marts. Got to shout out our friends at Wallace & Wallace. They are busy right now as the fencing and overhead door specialists in Manitoba, doing it since 1946. If you need the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter did a number on your old one, they've got you covered with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, wood fences. And if you need a new garage door, they also have Winnipeg's largest selection of garage doors. Easiest way to get in touch is give them a call at 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenniston. And hey, shout out to the fellas at F Apparel as well. If you're looking in your closet and realize you need to up your menswear game as we get into summer, F Apparel is the spot. Custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. 15% discount for wedding parties. So if you do have if you're in a wedding party or having one, make sure to talk to the guys at F about that sale. And great deal for suits for 2024 high school grads as well. You can check that out inside. 190 Smith Street. Make an appointment and set up a fitting at F. That's EPHapparel.com. All right. Let's welcome in our pal Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Lots to chop up with Mike today. Mike, welcome back to the program. How are you?
I'm doing great, Huss. We do have a lot to chop up, and this will come as news to you, but I suspect you'll be entertained by this little nugget. Guess what I'm doing this Friday night?
This Friday night?
Maybe you shouldn't guess, actually. I don't know where this could go.
Yeah, I was just about to say, get some creative. This Friday, so it's going into the weekend. It is after the Bombers aren't playing.
It's sporting related.
Sporting related. Okay, I don't know. Fill me in.
It plays off something you recently did. You were on the field at Blue Cross Park. Now, you were on tarp duty. I am going to be taking the mound on Friday to throw out the ceremonial first pitch before Friday's Gold Eyes game. Apparently, it's Free Press night. Who knew there was such a thing?
Have you done it before?
I have not done it before. And, I've already been sent like a bunch of memes and gifts from friends and family.
You get the 50 cent?
Exactly. But there's a lot, not just 50 cent. There is a whole history. We could have a coffee table book or a documentary on bad pitches. So we'll see what my heater looks like. But yeah, that'll be fun. I hope I don't throw my arm out. Hopefully won't require Tommy John surgery after that. You've done it before, right?
I have done it before, and it's funny. I remember, and of course, I had a bunch of friends there, and thinking, okay, don't screw this up.
Yeah.
And we went out there to the mound, and I realized that my crew had gathered right behind the plate and were giving me the business from about the time I hit the third base line the third base line walking out. And I grabbed that thing. They said, okay, we're ready to go. It probably wasn't in my hand for more than 2 seconds. I did not want to think about it. I've thrown a ball a million times.
Yep.
Do not let it get into your head. And I just let her go. And it was a great strike. I Barry Horowitz myself afterwards for
Nice.
getting it done. But there is a little bit of pressure on it, Mike, especially being the sports guy now. You have to come through. This is not the guy from the finance section or the comics that's throwing. You will be expected to have at least a passable first pitch, but I think you have that club in your bag.
I think I do as well. I will have some family and friends there. I don't know if they'll be giving me the business quite the same way. I mean, maybe my mom and dad will.
Hopefully they won't. Well, although I'd love to see it.
It almost sounds like you experience what a typical NBA player experiences when they're on the free throw line. Yeah. That's what it must feel like. And good on you that you were able to find the intestinal fortitude to come through big time. So yeah, well, you've raised the bar, Huss. I'll try not to lower it too much.
Hey, you know what? Listen, we're going to get to hockey in a minute, but while you mentioned that you are going to be throwing out the Gold Eyes, by the way, just a couple tickets left. If you want to join us on a week today, next Tuesday, WST patio party, go to the website, winnipegsportstalk.com, click on the Gold Eyes link, or go into the link in the description. $20 gets you your ticket. We'll have a koozie for everybody as well. Those are going to come in time for the game, which should be fun. And it's a great new facility. Like, they built these 2 new big party decks on the first base line with bar-style tables and chairs right below craft beer corners. So looking forward to seeing everyone. We've had amazing response. As I say, we're down to just a couple tickets left, like 3 or 4. So make that happen. Don't miss out if you do want to join us. And Mike, you had a neat, the Fish are hot right now. They had that real rough start. Logan Watkins taking the team down to Cleburne, where he was the manager, a very successful manager for the last few years. They had an ownership change. They wanted Pete Incaviglia with the name from the majors. So Logan's here. They have really turned it around. And I mean, last year was a disaster for the Fish and very forgettable for everybody in the organization. I've watched this team both at home and on the road. There's some ball players right now with this team right now. And I think that we're going to see a really, really fun summer of baseball. And it seems like things are coming together. And you really impressed with Logan Watkins as well. I'm sure you enjoyed the conversation with him.
I did. I caught up to him yesterday in Illinois, where the Gold Eyes were about to start a 3-game series. They won last night, their 3rd straight. They'll play 2 more tonight and Wednesday. And then, as you say, Huss, back home for actually what is the longest homestand of the year, Friday night, when yours truly will toss out the opening pitch. That's the start of a 9-gamer at home. And yeah, the Gold Eyes don't look now after an 0-4 start and a 3-7. That's what they were through their first 10, which were all on the road. Gold Eyes are above 500. They're 15-14. And, you know, if folks haven't been paying attention, they have, it's not even close right now, Huss. They have the best pitching staff in the American Association. And, you know, I've covered the Gold Eyes now for a number of years. I don't normally associate independent baseball and elite pitching. Those are words that don't often go together. The Gold Eyes have some elite pitching, and, you know, they just did something which you almost never see. Forget about in independent baseball. You almost don't see this at all at any level of pro baseball. They nearly rattled off 3 straight complete games by their starter. On Saturday night, their starter went 8 2/3 in a 7-4 win. And then Sunday and last night, back-to-back complete games by Joey Matuvlich and Landon Barrasso last night, an absolute gem. So the Gold Eyes, Logan Watkins joke that the only people not happy on the team right now is the bullpen, because they are they're like the Maytag repairmen. Remember that commercial? They just sit around and they've got nothing to do because the starters are going so deep. So it's pretty wild to think that in 3 consecutive games, the bullpen was needed to get 1 out. That's it. The starters have got 80 of 81 outs over the last 3 games, and the Gold Eyes are rolling. See if they can pick up another win or 2 here on the road before they head home, as mentioned, for that long homestand.
Yeah, and they've already had Adam Hall, who had was just on a tear out of the gate, had his contract purchased by, I believe it was Milwaukee. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, you know, he's off to a major league system. Anyway, it's going to be a fun weekend and a great homestand coming up for the Fish. And you can read more about the team and Mike's conversation with Logan Watkins in the Winnipeg Free Press. Let's talk Jets for a minute. I'm not sure if you caught Dreger last night on Jay Onright. And again, did he say much? No, not really. But what I found interesting, Mike, was sort of what was said and the way that it was put forth. And, I kind of pointed out earlier, we know that Dregs has a very close pipeline into Kevin Cheveldayoff's office. And, when some of these things are brought up, in a way, it's sort of a window into what the organization is thinking and the message that they want to get out. And pretty clear right now that Jets sources are saying that Nikolai Ehlers isn't really that keen or interested at this time at talking about an extension, which is understandable, is fine with playing out his contract this year, knowing that he'll have unrestricted free agency the following year, but that Kevin Cheveldayoff is both open to listening to other general managers, but also it not being a front burner issue. They do have to get assistant coaches. They've got to figure out some unrestricted free agents like Dylan DeMello and Brandon Dillon, if there's a possibility. And also mentioned, and the quote that kind of stuck out to me, you can't just re-sign everybody. There is a cap. And it seemed to be maybe bracing Jet fans for the fact that, a few players that have been big part of this team and a successful team for the last couple of years through the regular season might not be around. What was your read, and what's your read right now on the situation with Ehlers in particular, but as well as the pending UFAs?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's an interesting little window potentially into Kevin Cheveldayoff's mindset right now. I'll say this. I mean, I do agree that Nikolai Ehlers is probably it's not the top priority right now because he's not a UFA in 3 weeks from now or 20 days, which is when July 1st is. They do have the benefit of some time. That being said, it's an issue that I feel is going to have to be addressed one way or another this summer. Now, by getting it out there that, the Jets aren't rushing into anything, that's probably a smart negotiating tactic for the other GMs, right? The message is you're not going to just catch Kevin Cheveldayoff on a bad day and absolutely fleece him because he wants to solve this potential problem quickly. It would probably be to the Jets' benefit to slow play this. That's kind of the Kevin Cheveldayoff way, isn't it, Huss? I mean, we've seen it on many things over the years. He typically doesn't rush into these decisions. He keeps his cards very close to the vest. And so could Nikolai Ehlers be dealt before the draft? For sure. But I don't see the draft as some kind of hard deadline to get a decision, either an extension or a trade. For one thing, Huss, if the Jets are moving Nikolai Ehlers, I think they're thinking way beyond just a draft pick. And so a lot of people look to the draft as kind of a deadline. That's when in trades, because you typically see some draft picks maybe move. I don't know that I think the Jets, they have a window right now. They're trying to compete. And even if you could get a good draft pick back for Nikolai Ehlers, that's not really helping the team right now unless you spun that into something else. So, yeah, I think there's other priorities. I'm frankly surprised that they don't have their 2 assistant coaches hired yet. I figured that would be done by now. We're seeing, Scott Arniel now over 2 weeks ago talked about some urgency because other teams were also looking. We're now seeing a bunch of teams, the New Jersey Devils, they just hired an associate today in Jeremy Colliton. So we're seeing teams fill those positions. The Ottawa Senators just last week. I still think it's got to just now be a matter of days, if not hours, before the Jets do that. But then there's other matters, like you say, for the guys that are UFAs coming right up. Either they make a deal before July 1st or they, I guess, wait till July 1. Now that could happen too. And I look at a guy like Vlad Nemestikov, Huss, who I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, they let him get to free agency last summer, but then they signed him later in the day on July 1. I believe that's how that played out, if I'm not mistaken. So, that doesn't preclude a similar situation from happening. Maybe whether it's Brendan Dillon, Dylan DeMello, Sean Monahan, if those guys, even if there's interest from the Jets, maybe they want to let those guys just take a look around the landscape, and maybe the Jets themselves want to look around the landscape. Put it this way, I still wouldn't shut the door on any particular player, even if they're not retained by July 1. I think there would still be a chance the Jets could circle back and the player could circle back to the Jets. So yeah, Kevin Cheveldayoff has a lot on his plate. He's also got the draft, of course, coming up in a couple weeks from now. So we'll see what happens when it comes to Ehlers. But yeah, I mean, the Dreger report, like you say, nothing earth-shattering, but perhaps pushing it down the to-do list a little bit. And for that reason, I suspect this is something that could play out kind of well into the summer. But again, I do think, this is just my own personal opinion, it is very risky to head into next season with Nikolai Ehlers as a pending UFA. I get that you could use him potentially as a rental, your own rental, if you will, and just let him walk. But that's a pretty valuable asset. Now, that being said, they've got a lot of years out of him. They've obviously gotten some very good production. I just don't know that that's the Winnipeg Jets way. Could they play it that way? I guess. I think at the end of the day, they don't want to do anything that takes away from what the team will potentially be next season. And if they feel that trading Ehlers for whatever they might get back for him would actually make the team worse, not better in the short term, then I suppose that's a strategy they could employ. But that's a risky strategy because, you know, whether you're looking to move him at the deadline, I don't think you'd be doing that. Not if you think you're a playoff team next year. So then you're potentially losing him for nothing. And for a team like the Jets that prides itself on draft and develop, that's not really the Winnipeg Jet way.
Yeah, I mean, I could make an argument that, you know, the potential return for Ehlers might be even greater at the deadline than might be on the table right now, considering everything else that the teams have on. But at the same time, first of all, it becomes a talking point and a story around the team constantly from the first day of training camp until there's some sort of conclusion on it. The other thing is, Mike, to your point, if you are planning on doing it at some point and the team's playing really well and Ehlers is contributing in a big way, it makes it pretty hard to do if you are a contending team, which is where the team's been for the last couple of years in the second half of the season. So
yeah,
I'm sort of with you on that. I mean, the one thing that I'll say, and again, you know, we're hearing stuff. I mean, it's the Jets sources that have been reportedly putting out that he's not keen on thinking about an extension. I think if they really, really wanted to keep him, I think the fact that there's a new head coach coming in, you know, I think that they would almost put this out that, you know what, we're committed to Nikolai Ehlers. He's a huge part of our team moving forward. We're excited to see the way he looks on the team under Scott Arniel, and we hope to have more conversations about that. It hasn't really been anything like that.
No.
And I mean, listen, we're also talking about a team that has been great in the regular season that has fallen short in the playoffs. As much as I love Ehlers and pay to see him play, and he's a fan favorite and a real exciting guy to watch, he has not been a big contributor in the playoffs. And if you were, I mean, that's going to be a black mark against him when it comes to evaluating what you do. Do you make a big push to try to keep this player? And I think so many of these decisions are not thinking about the regular season, but are thinking about how do we be better and more competitive against the Colorados and the Dallases, which is the path out of the Central Division. So I am sort of with you on that. Let's move over to the defense for a second, because, I mean, the Ehlers story, I think, is going to be here for us to talk for a number of weeks. Dillon and DeMello, like the fact that we've heard, you know, this message from Dreger, I was specifically thinking about those guys when they fired out that, okay, you know, you can't sign everybody. And we've kind of said all along on this program, it's unlikely that both would be back. But man, when you look at the blue line right now without those guys, there's 4 guys signed for next year. One's Josh Morrissey, one's Dylan Sandberg, and the other are Neil Pionk and Nate Schmidt, who I mean, could or could not be part of the lineup. I mean, Neil Pionk's been a mainstay, but I think his play would suggest that maybe there is plenty of room for upgrade. Ville Heinola should be in the mix. Elias Salmonson. The bottom line is if those guys are gone, they need to add some defense as well, and that could be part of potentially an Ehlers move if that's the case. But just when it comes to Dillon and DeMello, what do you think their contracts will look like, whether it's here in Winnipeg or elsewhere? Because part of me thinks that, on the other side of 30, especially for Dillon, teams will not be as aggressive to kind of pony up money and, most importantly, term. But then on the other side of it, Mike, you look at the fact that the cap is going up, the want for big, strong defensemen, which really helps in Brendan Dillon's side of things, and then the numbers of Dylan DeMello and how he fit with Josh Morrissey. Like, I think there will be a real demand for those guys, and I'm kind of going back and forth on whether there's not the money that they might think out there, but I think with the cap going up, finally, this might actually be a great time for guys to be UFAs.
Well, and the news, I realize it's only $300,000, but that doesn't hurt either. That the news that the salary cap will actually be $88 million, not 87.7. You're right, Huss. I actually was doing something similar yesterday. I was looking at Cap Friendly, pouring one out for the soon to be gone website, now property or soon to be property of the Washington Capitals. You look at the blue line, and it's not just DeMello and Dillon and Colin Miller, who's also a UFA. Logan Stanley's an RFA, and then people may not even realize this. Kyle Capobianco, who was some really nice insurance, albeit insurance that wasn't needed last season. He was like the best defenseman in the AHL. He's also a UFA. And so, like, it gets thin real quick. And, as you mentioned, they only have 4 NHLers actually under contract for next year. In Morrissey, Schmidt, Pionk, and Sandberg. Those 4 guys, they combine to make almost $20 million between them. That's a big chunk already out of an $88 million salary cap. And that's only 4 guys. And 2 of those guys, Pionk and Schmidt, it would be probably an understatement to say that they were much maligned at times last season. So if the idea is to get even better, how are you doing that if you're the Winnipeg Jets, given what you currently have signed and who is potentially walking out the door? Yes, as you mentioned, they've got Ville Heinola, Elias Salomonsson. Those guys obviously not carrying big cap hits. Ville is an RFA, so they do have to get a new deal with him. I don't expect, though, given how little he's played at the NHL, that's going to be a huge number at this point. But it does beg the question that if not DeMello and or Dillon coming back, what might they be looking for out there on the free agent market on July 1, which is now 20 days away? And, it goes without saying, Huss, that if DeMello and Dillon, if both those guys aren't brought back, the Jets' blue line is going to look dramatically different next year. It has to, either by way of internal promotions of youth or additions from other teams via free agency or maybe a trade. And that's where a guy like Ehlers again comes back into the conversation. And maybe that's also why the Jets, to tie it all together, maybe with Ehlers, it's not a priority. Maybe Kevin Cheveldayoff wants to let the dust settle a little bit. Let free agency play out. Let the Jets themselves see what they have on the blue line, whether they did retain one of their UFAs or not, whether they were able to go get a guy as a UFA on July 1. And if not, then that's where maybe Ehlers becomes a very valuable asset if they identify something that is currently on another team that they would like. So I got to think so much of what happens in these next few weeks revolves around the blue line. We know Huss, yes, there's a couple question marks at forward. Obviously, Monahan is the big one, whether or not they would resign him. And it sounds like there's a good chance he's going to at least explore free agency on July 1. As I said, I don't think that means the door is entirely shut on the Jets. but they're a lot more stable at the forward position. It's the blue line and, to a lesser degree, the backup goalie position, which really needs to get a potential facelift here in the coming weeks. And to me, that is the most interesting thing to look at right now with the Winnipeg Jets. And we're seeing, as these playoffs have played out, and we're seeing, what a team like the Florida Panthers and their back end, right? A lot of like tremendous puck movers, but also physicality, size. Like, you look at Florida's blue line, and they would seem to me to jump out as like, that's the kind of blue line a championship team needs. And how far are the Jets from having that kind of blue line? Well, they're a lot further away if Dylan DeMello and Brendan Dillon both have new addresses in a couple weeks from now.
Yeah, it will be fascinating to see what we hear heading into the week in Vegas, and then, what happens for player personnel wise. And then listen, it doesn't look at this point like maybe we're going to be getting a 7-game cup final. But if the cup final does go to the 24th, like we're leaving to Vegas on the 25th, there is a possibility that management of the winning team might have to miss the parade because they're going to be working in Vegas. And then you get through that weekend, everyone travels home on Sunday. Free agency opens up on Monday, Mike.
Well, and for folks who may not realize this, the other reason the Stanley Cup Final ending date is important here, the buyout window doesn't begin until after the Stanley Cup is presented. And again, the buyout window can be an important tool, and it's where we look at a team like the Jets and a guy like Nate Schmidt, whether that is something they would potentially utilize. You're talking, Huss, about potentially a very chaotic period here where GMs, who may want to use that buyout window, which would, obviously create salary cap space and job openings that they would then no doubt want to try and fill on July 1. Like, the turnaround may be as short as it's ever been here. I suspect there are a lot of GMs right now that are at least quietly praying for a Florida sweep, and for this series to end as early as this Saturday, if the Panthers can win the next two, because it would declutter what is a very cluttered timeline right now in a significant way.
Mike, great stuff. Hey, just on the way out, we're going to hear from Ocean in a minute, as the Bombers get out to Ottawa to try to even their record at 1-1. What did you think about opening night at Princess Auto Stadium?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's always wise to consider these things in a vacuum and not. I know we all want to make, everyone wants to make snap judgments. First things first, it would appear the Montreal Alouettes are a very good football team. And I think everybody, at least that was the talk, right? That they were a very good team coming in, and they went out and showed it. So, did the Bombers just get beaten by maybe the best team in the East, maybe the best team in the CFL? Well, we don't know that yet. We're 1 week into the season. But this may be one of those games where you look back in a month or two from now and say, okay, well, that makes a little more sense. Look how good the Alouettes are. That being said, the Bombers sure look like a team that it looked like a third preseason game, Huss, and in a way it kind of was for most of those starters, right? Those guys hadn't taken any real reps since like last fall. And they look like a team that kind of got caught by surprise. Obviously, unfortunate that kind of performance happens on their home field and to start the season. But it does make this week's game, a little more interesting, a little more spicy, if you will. I don't imagine, like, the Bombers have not had to deal with a whole lot of adversity over the last few years. I would say an 0-2 start to the season would be a mega dose of early adversity. That being said, I'm really curious to see how this group responds. They're a veteran group. They're a professional group. We know Mike O'Shea always seems to have these guys prepared. I would expect, Huss, a very solid bounce back for the Big Blue on Thursday night, and I would be very surprised if we didn't see that. And I might add, I guess, quite a bit concerned if we didn't see that. Mike,
great stuff. Good luck with the pitch. Maybe I'll have to come out to the game and give you the bit. Well, no, I'll be supportive. I will be supportive. And I'll look forward to talking to you next Tuesday before we're back at the ballpark for what should be a real fun night with a whole bunch of WST listeners. Looking forward to seeing you there. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you then.
You bet. Take care.
All right, there's Mike McIntyre. We are going to hear a little bit of Mike O'Shea in a minute. From Mike O'Shea, as I should say, on the upcoming game against Ottawa on Thursday before we welcome in Tyler Mislawchuk as he gets ready for the Paris Olympics. Royal Sports, speaking of the Blue Bombers, if you're getting ready for next Friday's game back at home, kick off to summer, June 21st, longest day of the year. Man, that's going to be a great way to get going into the weekend. And you need to get your Blues ready. Get on down to Royal Sports, an amazing selection of Blue Bomber gear, everything you need to support the home team out of Princess Auto Stadium. While you're there, check out the NFL gear coming in for the season, Major League Baseball, NHL, and of course, international soccer from around the world. Lots of Canada gear as well. As Canada gets ready to take on Lionel Messi in Argentina on the 20th to kick off the Copa America. But it's not just great merch. They've got a great Yeti section for you campers, not to mention softball, baseball, all sorts of water sport toys and games, and a huge selection of bikes as well. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. Follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. No pucks tonight, but we do have Blue Jays action going up against the Milwaukee Brewers. Jays lost 3-1 last night. Still 2 games under 500. All summer long, Boston Pizza's the place to watch the Blue Jays. And, of course, until the end of hockey season, the Cup Final as well. Check out that new playoff menu with the wing flights, the Sicilian square footer pizza, the jalapeno popper dip. Don't forget those ice cold schooners. And hey, if you're staying at home tonight, you can always get the great taste of Boston Pizza hot and fresh to your door by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. Tomorrow, our friends at Next Door Winnipeg are getting ready for another Wingy Wednesday. Pat Neufeld was quite intrigued about that, and I think the Bomber O-line are going to be making a visit down to Next Door. Of course, it's the brains behind Cosmos doing the food there, and they've got just some amazing offerings. But for you wing fans, you got to get down there for Wingy Wednesday, where a pound of naked wings will be $15, but the kicker is on Wednesdays they roll out the sauce cart where you get to choose your own sauces, mix and match and pour as much as you want from over 14 house-made sauces. Tried their weekly one, the Maui Wowie, a couple weeks ago, which was great. But anyways, a great spot, connected to Good Neighbor Brewing. And of course, they were doing the PWHL games where we had that great watch party for one of the games in the series between Boston and Minnesota. If you haven't checked out Next Door, do it soon. Or for tomorrow and Wingy Wednesday, they're at 116 Sherbrooke Avenue in the heart of Wolseley. And hey, tomorrow is a big day. We get into our picks for the U.S. Open on the Lock Shop, 2 days away from the third major of the year. Scotty Scheffler is the big favorite. So if you really want to dive into that, join us in the Lock Shop. And tomorrow we'll have Jeff Feinberg join us on our Breezy Bend Golf Report to dive in to the U.S. Open at Pinehurst #2. Speaking of Breezy Bend, popping by there after the show today. If you haven't already, or if you're thinking about making Breezy Bend one of Manitoba's top private courses, your long-term golfing home for you and your family, give our pal Corey Johnson a call over at the clubhouse or find out more online at breezybend.ca. All right, we're going to hook up with Tyler Mislawchuk in just a minute, but the Bombers are getting ready to try to even their record at 1 p.m., and they'll be doing it against a former teammate. Of course, Drew Brown, moving to Ottawa, the nation's capital, as a free agent in the offseason. He'll be the focus of the Blue Bomber defense. Here's O'Shea on preparing for the Redblacks and Drew Brown.
What's it like preparing for a team that has yet to play a game this season?
Same as last week.
That's a good point. You know their quarterback very well, Drew Brown.
He's good. We liked him here.
Yeah. What was it like watching him develop for 3 years into now becoming a starter?
Yeah, I mean, coming in and learning the nuances of the CFL game is always interesting for a young guy, but he showed up as like I've told you 100 times, he showed up as a football junkie that was going to take in as much information as you could possibly give him and love every minute of it. So, he stuck around here as long as he could, and now he's got a team to run.
Now, Shea Given, I think that was Taylor Allen, giving him a little bit more on that last answer about Drew Brown. I did get a kick out of the first answer, just like last week, no tape on a team. Certainly Ottawa's going to have some tape on the Bombers, although hopefully the tape that the Bombers put out will be a lot nicer for at least Blue Bomber fans than what we saw on Thursday. Here's a little more on O'Shea. If it's easier to prepare for Drew Brown because they know him being on the Bombers for the last few seasons.
That's probably a decent question for guys on the defense that we're lining up across from him and seeing his movements and stuff like that from the sideline. I guess there's probably certain plays that he likes over other plays, but that our guys would know. But I don't know. He's in a different offense.
Yeah.
I mean, what?
Don't know what the play he likes yet.
Yeah, and I don't know that offense yet. Haven't seen it really.
All right, so not a lot from the coach on Drew Brown and what they're expecting. But here is a key bit. We know Kenny Lawler's on the 6th game and will not be with the team in Ottawa. One more from Coach O'Shea, and just dealing with adversity early in the season, and in particular, the loss of Kenny Lawler to the offense.
Yeah, the same as we would anything else. Just keep rolling along. Once again, these kind of things on a personal level, dealing with the person, dealing with Kenny, not the football player. Those are always tough ones because, he's got a number of weeks where he won't be able to do what he loves to do. Right? He's got to find a different role for himself, and we got to help him do that and keep him involved, right? Which is pretty important. And his teammates will look after him. He'll be engaged, but it isn't easy being injured, that's for sure.
Can you update the diagnosis yet on him, or prognosis?
Prognosis?
Either one.
The diagnosis or the prognosis?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll see. That's my update.
The reports that he's got a fracture. I see
he broke an arm,
out
sure.
there with a cast, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's not a couple weeks then. It's a while.
Yeah, probably.
Sucks, eh? Jeez.
For Kenny, yeah. Us too, but, more for the guy.
Oh, man. I'm actually getting more and more into the back and forth with Ocean and some of the local media, Remo. And Freezer was right in there. And we saw from Taylor earlier on, you got to be ready with a couple follow-up questions. Other you might just get one worded and then on to the next guy.
Yeah. Freezer is really trying to pull something out of him on Kenny Lawler. It sucks. Well, not as much for us, but for him. And
he did say that he had a broken arm. That was good for Freezer. I mean, he kept peppering with him and did get some legitimate information out of the coach. I mean, I heard it's a fracture, but yeah, we don't expect Kenny back in the next couple of days. There is an update. Shout out to Darren Bombing of Bonfire Sports, who asked today if Brady Oliveira is going to play in Ottawa. And Mike O'Shea, it is still to be determined. They'll see how he's feeling frequently prior to the depth chart release tomorrow and on kickoff Thursday. It couldn't specify right now if he'd be a game time decision, but Remo, he has not practiced this week. He will walk through in Ottawa tomorrow with the Bombers. That's really their only remaining on-field session in Winnipeg. So as much as they won't say that he will be a game time decision, I guess if he's a possibility, we're probably not going to know until game time, even with that roster release with the depth chart tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll have to wait and see. I imagine Johnny Augustine would be in. So, if you're going to set fantasy lineup, something to look out for. Now I'm thinking, okay, who's more likely to play Thursday? Barkov on Florida or Oliveira on Winnipeg? Because Stanley Cup Game 3 also going Thursday. So we'll have an eye on Oliveira as the Bombers look to rebound. I know they're still favorites, so the books still like the Bombers, but that was about it. I don't think you'll see a worse game than you saw in that home opener. I mean, I would hope not. That would be terrible.
You know what? You also won't see a worse DraftKings lineup put together by almost anyone in the CFL than me last week.
You had a lot of bombers.
I had Caleros, I had Lawler, I put all my money into the big bomber guys, and it was a skunking, to say the least. Speaking of, that question, we'll put the why not question of the day out to the gang in the YouTube chat here on Winnipeg Sports Talk for not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Do you think Leon Draisaitl, not will he get, but does he deserve a game suspension for the hit on Barkov? Interested to get your thoughts on that. Let us know in the chat for the why not question of the day. Speaking of that, Remo, we're still waiting to hear anything from NHL player safety on Draisaitl. No surprise that Connor Carrick is getting a fine, though, for the assault on the jewels of former Jet Dmitry Kulikov.
Yeah, I don't think Draisaitl. I think the ship has kind of sailed on Draisaitl. Maybe they're waiting to see if there's an injury because that's how they do things. It doesn't matter about the act. It matters about the result to player safety, which you can debate. But they did tweet out during that conversation with Mike, Edmonton's Sam Carrick has been fined $2,213.54. The maximum allowable under the CBA for slashing Florida's Dmitry Kulikov. Which part do you want to talk about? This ridiculous amount that's the maximum, or how they describe the act as slashing Kulikov? Which part?
Yes, it was an upward slash in between the legs worthy of a fine. And I assumed it would be $5,000, but I guess because he's probably making in and around the league minimum or about $1 million, that $5,000 gets divided down to $2,213. And do not forget the 54 cents. He's paying every last cent after the assault on it. I would send a fine to Ekblad, and I mean, I think Draisaitl would for sure get a fine. I think in a lot of other cases, if this was early in the playoffs, if it wasn't the final, if the Oilers weren't down 2-0, I kind of think Draisaitl would get a game, but I don't believe that is going to happen. All right, we've still got some horse picks. We'll get to the Coolbet lines coming up. But a little earlier, we caught up with Winnipeg's Tyler Mislawchuk, who is deep into training, getting ready to return to the Olympic Games in Paris as Canada's top triathlete. Well, hard to believe we are less than 2 months away from the beginning of the Olympics in Paris. And when it comes to Manitobans that will be competing in the Olympics, it is so good to welcome in Canada's #1 triathlete, number 12 in the world, and a good friend of the program, Winnipeg's Tyler Mislawchuk, who joins us from the altitude and heat of Flagstaff, Arizona. Tyler, welcome back to Winnipeg Sports Talk. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on and the warm welcome.
Hey, dude.
Big fan of the show, you know that. So, yeah, pretty happy to be on.
Well, it is great to have you back on. And, of course, we see your dad, Fred, around the rink all the time doing his work from the broadcast side. And we're always keeping tabs on, hey, how's Tyler doing? Where's he at right now? Is it for people? I mean, international triathlon at your level is very different than probably almost any other sport, between where you have to train and where you have to compete. Give us an idea of where you have been over the course of the last year getting ready for the biggest event every 4 years, the Olympic Games.
Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious you say that because long story short, I damaged my passport, water damage while traveling. So I had to apply for a new passport. And they were trying to get me to list all the places I've been in the last year. And I was like, okay, well, it might take a minute. I can't do it off by heart. I'm gonna have to pull up my calendar. And they were like pretty confused. They're like, sir, you should know your own travel. And I was like, okay, well, just give me a sec. And I started listing the places I've been in the last year. Like I've been in the Middle East, I've been in Saudi, I've been in Israel, I've been in Europe like 10 times, Asia, Korea, Japan, China. a bunch of time in altitude here in Flagstaff, Arizona. Raced in Montreal, which is like basically the home race for us in Canada, the highest level race. But yeah, I could go on a list of, and I'm probably missing, New Zealand, Australia. It's just, it is, my passport is well stamped and well documented. And that's what I was trying to explain to the Canadian was, my passport's damaged, but I've also flown about 500 times on this passport. So it's not like I'm being irresponsible. It's just something that happened.
By the way, send one with some extra pages when you're getting it back in.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, you must be stacked with air miles, though. I got to say that.
I got a few points. I'll tell you that. I'm looking forward to using them once I retire.
Hey, we were talking to Fred at the Scott O'Neill presser and catching up, and he mentioned that you had a bit of a setback lately after really getting into prime competitive shape for the Olympics. I mean, fill people in on what's happening and how you're feeling right now.
Yeah, well, it's been a kind of a rocky start to the year. So I'll rewind back. I finished my season in end of October, November last year, and basically been living, training most of the time, bouncing back and forth basically between Canada, Vegas, and altitude here. Vegas for the warmth, Canada because it's the National Training Center, and then altitude here. And got in really, really good shape come March. And I traveled over to Abu Dhabi, actually, to race. There's a World Series there. And, you won't believe it, but Abu Dhabi, the desert, had a storm. And so the city of Abu Dhabi canceled the race. And so I traveled, 40 hours, got a race canceled, said, okay, we're good. We'll train for this race in Japan in May. And I got to May, raced it in good shape. And in the first few kilometers of the bike, an athlete took my back wheel out and hit the pavement at like 50 kilometers an hour on a straightaway. And got a concussion, a little bit of broken ribs and bruised and battered. I'll tell you what, I had to travel to Italy right after that race and don't recommend it. I had wounds. I have wounds all over my back and everything, and trying to change bandages on a international flight is not something I would recommend to anyone. But yeah, that happened now. It's about 3 weeks ago, and I'm kind of finally starting to feel myself again. It's concussions are tough because, again, like we were talking about, it's not a physical. I mean, it's a physical, your brain injury, but you can't really see it the same way as if someone's limping or, someone's, not moving or they can't move their shoulder in a certain way. And definitely frustrating for me. It's the first time I've had that where I felt limited, but, it almost feels like you can't pinpoint it. But yeah, now we're June 5th. We're just under 2 months away from the Olympics, and feel like I'm getting back on track. For me, this will be my third Olympics, and I've gone twice. And the last one I tore my Achilles like 2 weeks before. So, I'm going to the third one with the hopes of a medal. That's kind of what keeps me going and motivated at this point.
Well, and I mean, listen, with this sport, it is a steady climb to the top. And, prior to this previous injury, coming off last season, you were nudging in right around the top 10 in the world, established as the number one Canadian triathlete. But you've been used to a few setbacks. And more so than anything, I think your sport prepares you to power through anything put in your way.
Yeah, triathlon, we always compare even let's say swimming or running. Swimming, you get in the pool, you watch the Olympics, and they have their own lane. And so you're kind of in control of your destiny. You can't control how fast others go, but you can kind of control. No one's going to hit you in the face. No one's going to crash you on the bike. Same with running. You get on the track, and it's like you run your time. And triathlon's just not like that because you're in the water, you're getting hit, you're getting dunked by people. You're going on the bike, you're riding with a group of people, and you're at the mercy of if someone slides out, they take you out. You have multiple options of mechanicals, getting a flat tire, bike breaking. I go a long list of just random stuff that's happened over the years. And then on top of that, you're trying to just like any sport, you're trying to push your body to the limit, and that fine line between being the best in the world and being broken is tough. That's what I went through the last Olympics. I trained to win the Olympics. I was trying to win. I wasn't trying to come top 10, which I could have trained safer. And when you try to win the Olympics, you got to take some risks, especially, you know, if you're a kid from Manitoba who didn't grow up doing it until, 16, you're going to be at a bit of a disadvantage. So I need to take a little bit of risk, and sometimes it pays off and sometimes it doesn't. That's sport. That's what keeps us watching, right? Like that's what keeps everyone betting on sports. That's what keeps everyone showing up to, preseason games, season games, playoff games, everything.
You mentioned starting at 16. I mean, for folks that aren't familiar with you, let's face it, Winnipeg does not seem like a hotbed of triathlon. How did you even get into this? And fill people in a little bit on the journey that took you from someone that tried it out to a world-class Olympian trying to get a medal.
Yeah, I mean, my story starts like pretty much every Canadian kid's, and probably how you most start. I played hockey, and I actually played AAA hockey. I played the highest level hockey until I was 16. And actually, a few of the guys on my team got drafted to the WHL. And I got invited out to some MJHL camps. But I was doing, in the meantime, I was doing cross country because our coach thought we were all lazy and said we got to get out and stay in shape during the season. It was maybe less for me than some of the other guys, but my coach identified me there, and I decided I'd give triathlon a try. And what I found was like the more effort I put in, the better I got. It was like direct correlation, which is easy in the earlier days. It's harder as you get farther in the sport because it doesn't always, the more effort doesn't always correlate to more results. But definitely early days, it's like the harder you work, the luckier you get type of thing. And to be honest, like I look back and the work ethic I put in now, I'm like, I wish I had put a little bit in more during hockey but you're young at that point and you're just, you don't know any better. Whereas like I go to practice, but I never shot pucks or did anything after, I just like enjoyed playing. And if anything, this sport has taught me, like you said, it's like success, downfall, success, downfall. It's been like such a rocky journey. I mean, at 19, Canada told me that I didn't think I could make the Olympics in 2016, and that my name didn't really belong in the same sentence. And so I decided to leave the national program then, and ended up doing quite well. And they ended up recruiting me back, and then I made the 2016 games. So bit of
funny how that works.
Yeah, it's always you always see the meme of like the supporters before, then the people congratulating you after. It's always a smaller crowd saying they believe in you before, and a bigger crowd after when it's happened. But I've been 2016. I went and was a young athlete. I finished 15th. It was dream come true to go to the Olympics. To be honest, when I started the sport, I never thought I could get there. It was always small, set little goals, and all of a sudden you're at the Olympic Games. And then fast forward 2021, I'm an Olympic medal favorite, and I tear my Achilles 2 weeks before. So those of you who don't know, with a torn Achilles, it's really not pleasant to move around. And I raced the whole thing on a torn Achilles and finished 15th. So kind of gives you a...
How is that even possible?
I don't know. The funniest part was my coach, after I got an MRI, and they're like, yeah, your Achilles is torn. And we thought that maybe it was before, but I was like, I'm gonna do it. And my coach didn't believe me. He wanted to see the MRI because he didn't, same thing. He didn't know how it was possible that I had, raced for 2 hours on a torn Achilles. But I remember running out of the water, because when you're transitioning from the swim to the bike, you don't have any shoes, and shoes help a bit. But I remember running out and like running to my bike and being like, oh goodness, like this isn't good. And I tried to convince the team to let me race the relay 4 or 5 days later. And they all got out and they said, well, if you can run around this circle block in the village, you can, without limping, you can do the thing. And so I did this little, small loop, and I was like, oh, I'm trying not to limp. And I'm like, I think I'm doing a good job. And they've recorded a video, and they show me the video after, and I look like a wounded soldier running through. But I just had that mindset of like, I'm going to do this. But after that, I couldn't walk or run for months. It's a terrible injury, but kind of gives you perspective of what the mind's capable of doing. I mean, you see it all the time with, any sports league. Someone gets injured in a game and they might finish the game off, and then somehow after you hear this crazy injury and you're like, how did they manage that? And sometimes it's not explainable.
Well, that level of pain tolerance, I imagine, is a big reason why you and many of the best in the world are where they are, because this is not a sport not for the faint of heart. Tyler Mislawchuk's with us, getting ready for the Paris Olympics in triathlon. You mentioned, like, I have to ask you just about the actual event. Like, you know, we see cycling teams and they've got guys driving with them and they've got a car. When you're out there in something like the Olympics or one of these top tier events, what sort of support do you have? Like, what happens if you're physically able to go, but your bike gets a flat or something like that? Are you screwed, or is there a way to get back in the race?
Yeah. So with like my type of racing at the top level, essentially they'll have like 2 wheel pits during the race along the course. And so let's say if we're riding 40K, there's a 5K circuit. So every 5K, there's going to be 2 wheel circuits where you could go in if you get a flat tire. But if your bike just breaks or like something malfunctions, then your day is pretty much done, which is the absolutely cruel part of the sport. Is like you can train for like I said, just, you know, for 12 months or in my case, 10 years now, and you can have a mechanical on the bike and your day's done. So it's a pretty unfortunate part. But that's one of the things, like before the race, like I have my bike checked by like, you know, by the mechanic here. Then when I get to a race, I might get it double checked and go through all the little things and pretty much control everything I can control. The only thing is our bikes are so like fancy now. It's crazy to think, like I started triathlon on a Walmart mountain bike and now I'm biking on a bike that, you know, has electronic gears and that the cables are built into the bike. So some stuff, like if the electronics malfunction, like there's nothing I can do, you know, because you probably just need new wires and cords and like it's programmed by a computer. Like the bikes now are so crazy that make it hard for like an average guy who knows a lot about bikes to even be able to fix your bike yourself.
Yeah, the technology and and you would think like something like triathlon is one of the more simple sports, but the minute you get on the bike, I mean, that machine is a huge part of the competition. You mentioned you're in Flagstaff. This is like high altitude and it's hot. What's it like out there? Do you have other triathletes there with you as well? And how much does that help you push yourself to the limit to try to get the most out of you in the biggest races?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy up here. It's 7,000 feet, so it's 2,100 meters in Flagstaff, Arizona. And I can actually ride my bike. They've got a ski resort, believe it or not, in Arizona, right down the road from me. And you can ride to 3,100 meters or 10,000 feet. So for those who don't know, like at 7,000 feet, like walking up a pair of stairs is crazy. Like my parents came and visited and, you know, and my dad's in decent shape. Like it's not like he's going to get out of breath walking up the stairs at home, and he walks up the stairs here and he's gasping for air. You know, even for myself, like you buy groceries and you walk up the stairs with your groceries, and like a guy who trains 30 hours a week, I'm like, oh. So it never really gets easier. But that's one of the things I'm trying to use to my advantage. Essentially being up at altitude, for those who don't know, it increases hemoglobin, red blood cells. So it basically gives you more endurance, you know, like let's say a hockey reference would be like, okay, you could bring the intensity for 30, 40 seconds in a shift. Now you could bring it for 60, 75 seconds at the same intensity. Not necessarily a higher intensity, but just kind of extending that effort out. So that's what altitude does. And yeah, it's not 30 degrees. It's warm here, but down in Phoenix, 2 hours away, it's already like 35, 40 some days. So 30 is nice, I think, when you're down in Phoenix, and I've been down there quite a bit. It's toasty. So it's just manageable enough here to not cook yourself completely, but you definitely got to be careful because it's super easy to overdo it. And on top of that, like, you know, I burn 6,000-7,000 calories a day. You add 1,000 or 2 a day on top of that now because your body's just constantly working harder and harder just to survive, basically.
How much do you eat?
Too much. Yeah, I've got to do like meal replacement shakes. I've got to do like all the little tricks because like I'm just out there. Like today I've got a, you know, hour run, 5 kilometer swim, and a 3-hour ride. And so you just do that. And then the time of the day kind of shrinks away because you're commuting to all these, and it's like, when's the time to eat? So you definitely got to eat a lot, but I definitely hit a lot of shakes on top of that just to make sure I'm covered. I'm not like a massive guy. It's probably why I didn't make it in hockey. So I got to like be on the defensive of like, no one ever feels bad for me because I can eat everything and anything and never put on weight. But it's also because I'm training 30 hours a week and living in a mountain, So
yeah, I think if everyone's out there burning 6,000 to 7,000 calories a day, you'll be in good shape. Trust me. Trust me on that. Tyler, listen, as we look forward to Paris, the event is on July 29th. So that's very close to the opening ceremonies. We're well less than 2 months away from it right now. It's great to hear you're feeling better, back on the bike, back training. Fill us in on the sort of the month prior to the Olympic Games, where you'll be and what the goals are to get yourself in the best opportunity to get on that podium.
Yeah, I mean, we're 7-8 weeks out now, so I'm going to do another few weeks here at altitude and then essentially follow the same protocol I always do, is like drop down 3-4 weeks before and be able to kind of fine tune with my team. So we're heading over to Girona, Spain, which is actually the original spot where Lance Armstrong used to go and train. It's just full of mountains. It's a beautiful little town, and it's only a train ride away from Paris. So that's the benefit of Europe. You can kind of use train systems, or that everything's a lot closer than being in North America where we're so spread out. So yeah, final month, I'm going to be with my team in Spain, and basically, I mean, the hard work will be done in the next 3 weeks, and the last 3 weeks will be making sure I stay healthy, making sure I kind of fine tune and, put the makeup on, as they say. I'm building the body and just the final touches in the last few weeks. So like I said earlier, like what keeps me up is like winning an Olympic medal, but that's what everyone wants to do. So it's not an easy task. But like we said on the day, anything can happen. You can get a mechanical. You can have a great day. Someone can have a bad day. Anything can happen. Someone can get sick the night before. But that's what makes sports so exciting. And, that's what kept me going. I'm 29 now. This will be my third Olympics. And I just as motivated to get out and train today as I was, for the 2016 Olympics, which is saying a lot. Some days are harder than others to get up and when you're exhausted and tired, but in a general sense, I'm still as motivated as ever, which is honestly in this sport is the main thing, because once you lose that motivation or hunger, it's not so fun to go out for 6 hours of training a day to get yourself in peak physical condition.
It's truly incredible what you've done over the last decade plus, and here's to it culminating with the greatest height of your career coming up on the 29th of July in Paris. Tyler, I can tell you that the city, the province, Canada, and certainly everyone here at Winnipeg Sports Talk is going to be pulling for you. Wishing you nothing but good health heading into that event. And we'll look forward to catching up, maybe even before or certainly after your Olympic experience. Go out there and give it your all.
Thank you, boss. Appreciate being on the show. Big fan, like always. So,
thanks so much, Tyler. All the best.
We're not just for the showboats or the champions. We're here for the good ones, the ones who work hard and show up for others, not to get recognized, but because it's the right thing to do. We'd like to think that our good intentions show up in our beer. We keep working to perfect it, not because we want fame or fanfare, but because you deserve it. 1919, the good you deserve.
Yes, our friends at Little Brown Jug. You know where a great spot for a 1919, or especially a generic, would be? In a boat at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. We'll be stocking up for our enjoyable trip for a few days in early August. I cannot wait to get out to Aikens right now. It is there's lots of great places to enjoy a beer. I don't know if there's a better one than Aikens Lake out in the boat. Of course, if you're looking for a world-class fly-in fishing opportunity in Manitoba, where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, Aikens is the spot. Incredible world-class fishing and even more world-class hospitality from the Aikens team and the Turenne family. If you're thinking about whether it be a corporate outing, friends and family, just getting the guys together for an incredible weekend of fishing off the grid, Aikens is the spot to do it. Find out more online at aikenslake.com for all the information, as well as availabilities for the rest of the 2024 fishing season. And make sure to check them out on all of their social channels at Aikens Lake. And don't forget, as Mike mentioned earlier, the Fish are back for a 9-game homestand beginning on the weekend. Mike's throwing out the first pitch on Friday. And then next Tuesday is our WST patio party at the Gold Eyes. 5 tickets remaining unless any have been sold during the show today. So if you're thinking about joining us, don't wait to jump on those tickets. There's a link in the description of this YouTube video. If you're listening on the podcast, get over to winnipegsportstalk.com and click the Gold Eyes link, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Cannot wait for that. All right, we got to get to the Coolbet Lines, and we also have to get to our horse picks for a few minutes. But Remo, we have to talk about this. There's one other huge story in sports today that shook me so hard when I found out about this just moments before we went live on the air. I almost wasn't able to do the show today. American hero, the legend, Joey Chestnut, is reportedly out of the 2024 Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest in an issue over a sponsorship that Joey Chestnut and his management have undertaken with Impossible Foods, which recently launched a vegan Frankfurter Imposter made from plants. Chestnut, 16-time mustard belt winner, the greatest eater in the long-storied history of Major League eating, with a world record 76 hot dogs and buns, not in the Nathan's contest. I mean, this is like taking Connor McDavid out of the Stanley Cup Final. This is like taking Patrick Mahomes out of the Super Bowl. How can this event even go on? Now, this is apparently, and MLE has always had some pretty strict rules when it comes to who you can represent. Of course, that goes back to Kobayashi, the legendary Kobayashi, who had 50 hot dogs and buns. Not participating in the later years of his career, Kobayashi officially retired from competitive eating earlier this year because of a contractual dispute of who he could and could not work with. But this is beyond that. A rep for Major League Eating said the organizers bent over backwards to meet Chestnut's other demands. They even agreed to let him participate in a rival Labor Day dog eating fest to be taped by Netflix, so long as no hot dog brand was mentioned. But they drew the line on letting Chestnut pitch for a different dog. He was to be paid $200,000 to appear in the Nathan's contest, or he was paid $200,000 last year, and was offered a $1.2 million 4-year contract going forward. And MLE said in a statement, "We are devastated to learn that Joey Chestnut has chosen to represent a rival brand that sells plant-based hot dogs rather than competing in the Nathan's famous 4th of July hot dog eating contest. They went to great lengths to accommodate Joey and his management team. For nearly 2 decades, they've worked under the same basic hot dog exclusivity provisions. But it seems like Joey and his managers have prioritized a new partnership with a different brand over our long-time relationship." I am devastated. Fans of the sport are devastated. And it just simply will not be the 4th of July south of the border if Joey Chestnut is not in New York City at Coney Island stepping up to win a 17th mustard belt.
Yeah, I was shook. This was terrible news to get before the show, and I agree with Tyson Ducharme in the chat. He says delegitimizes the whole contest. You can't have the hot dog eating contest without Joey Chestnut. This is like telling Tom Brady, as you said, he couldn't compete in the Super Bowl. And Mahomes, sure. And Joey Panku tweeted at us and said, even the live guys can play the majors. MLE has to realize that Chestnut is the contest. And he's right. I mean, he brings in ratings. You got to figure this out. And Chris Vermette says, or people in chat, Chris Vermette says, could this just be a work? And I was wondering if this was for could be just for publicity. I'm not sure. It seems very deep rooted. I mean, we haven't really talked about the 4th of July contest. It is coming up. I mean, there's not really much of a story. He comes in every year and dominates. That's not exciting. But now you have the will he, or won't he compete? You got to figure this out. I mean, he's the reason why people tune in. You think they would want him there. Who cares if he's representing a plant-based hot dog? It's not even a real hot dog. Is that even a competitor if it's not meat?
The fact that the vegans are trying to nose in and destroy the Nathan's contest, the backlash across America against veganism in general,
yes,
will be swift, thorough, and convincing. I am at T-Will right there. This is a dark day for sports. Listen, I'm shaking right now. Longtime listeners know Joey Chestnut, warm-up Hall of Famer back in the days, came on the show a couple of times. We have that great picture, actually, of the two of us with Joey when he came in studio with us. Before, that was the Joey's seafood fish taco eating contest, I believe. And he took on 4 Bomber fans and 4 Rider fans. Beat them all, of course. That's what the great ones do. But anyways, this is not the last you will hear of this. We will be on top of this story here on Winnipeg Sports Talk as we get closer to the 4th of July, which I am pumped that is on a Thursday today, because there's the photo. There's the photo of the two of us along with Joey Chestnut. That was after his 12th mustard belt.
This is 10 years ago, this picture. Wild.
10 years ago. What a man, what a competitor. And yes, there he was in those old Bomber jerseys. Haven't seen those ones in a while since we've made it happen. But hoping this gets straightened out. And I hope that, this potentially could be a work. I'm fine with them using WWE style tactics to get more eyeballs on the product. But as Pank said, there is no product without the GOAT, Joey Chestnut. I don't think we've got odds yet up for the Nathan's hot dog eating contest.
Probably off the board.
Well, for sure it's off the board right now. I mean, we're going to have to figure out what's happening. We do have tomorrow. So no hockey, no basketball tonight. Tomorrow, the Mavs are at home in a similar situation that the Oilers are, trying to win on home court or home ice and get back into their series. And Mavs are minus 137 faves. Celtics plus 116. Mavericks 2-point favorites. As far as the Oilers and Panthers go, the Oilers are favored tomorrow, or Thursday, I should say, minus 130 on the money line. Panthers plus 111. And the series price now, if you've got faith in Edmonton to come back and win 4 of the next 5, plus 350 on this series price. As far as the majors go today, Blue Jays back in action after dropping a 3-1 decision yesterday to the Milwaukee Brewers. Blue Jays, a slight favorite tonight, minus 118 for Toronto. Milwaukee is even money. My guy Kikuchi on the hill for the Blue Jays. And hopefully he can power them to a big win. And, they've had a tough start to recent series and then came back and won them as well. Got to get one tonight to give themselves a chance to do that. Other thing that you're going to want to take a look at, and we will talk about it tomorrow when Feinberg comes on, is the U.S. Open. Odds are up right now at Coolbet. Scotty Scheffler down to a plus 335 favorite. Shortest number I've ever seen in a major. This is prime Tiger Woods numbers right now, basically. Xander Schauffele second at 12-1, Rory 13-1, Colin Morikawa 18, Vic Hovland 20, Bryson DeChambeau 22-1, 25s for Ludwig Oberg and Brooks Koepka, John Rahm 30-1, and Tommy Fleetwood 40. We'll make our picks tomorrow in the lock shop, and as I mentioned, Jeff Feinberg will join us on tomorrow's show. All right, Remo, we got another great night of live racing at Assiniboia Downs tonight. I wasn't in the black yesterday. I did get a nice exacta, the 4-6 exacta, I think, in race 4. So just lost a little bit yesterday. Looking to get back above 500 today with my selections. And Did you strike out last night swinging for the fences?
0 for 4. Yeah, I got the golden sombrero yesterday. It's just been too many of those for me this year. Usually I get some winners, but I'm ice cold. So I'm going to spray and pray tonight.
Well, let's, I love it. Spray and pray. Let's see what we got. I'm not doing anything in race number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Are you?
Yes, I have. I'm trying to get an easy one here. Exacta Box, Dazzling Gold, and Call the Cops. 2 big favorites in this field of now 4 horses. So this isn't going to pay anything, but I got to feel good about myself. I want to get off to a good start.
No, that makes sense. Moving on to race number 2. I have an Exacta Box, and it is 2 and 5. Tecate Gold and Midsummer Soiree. The program selection has McLean's Bella there. AI. I'm sort of liking some of these AI smart picks. And we're going with the 2-5 in race number 2.
I'm throwing a little sprinkle down, $2 on Savage Love. Shout out to Adam Bighill. He's expected to be back Thursday. I have won on Savage Love before, so a bit of a longer shot. Some heavy favorites in this race, so maybe Savage Love can come a long shot. So I only put a toonie. There you go. Yeah.
Nice. I do not have any action on race 3.
I do not either. I have 5.
All right. Well, let's move to race 4. I am throwing down a win bet on number 2, Artful Jester. $3 on Artful Jester. That is my race 4 selection. What do you have in race number 5?
I have Exacta Box 4-7, Ratliff City, and Air Force Reserve. Finish 1 or 2. That's a bit of a chalk box here. Those are the 2. That's the programs. I figure if it's the program selection and AI smart pick, let's do a little Exacta Box there and hope they're right.
Actually, I'm rolling Triactor on this one, and I actually am taking Ratliff City and Air Force Reserve, and I'm adding number 2, Big and Bold.
Nice.
That's the AI pick, not the program selection. So we got the Triactor box, 247 for race number 5. What about race 6?
I'm out on 6. I just have a Triactor Box on race 7.
All right, I'm just going to throw $3 on number 2, Dancing in the Creek. To win. A very slight favorite. It really looks like the 2 favorites are LM Tucker, number 1, and Dancing in the Creek, number 2. We're going to go with horse number 2 for race number 6, which brings us to race number 7, the final. I've got a $2 Exacta Box on 5-7, Princess Belle and Island High.
I have
5-7.
I have 4-5-8. So I have Catch the Dream. I also have Princess Belle and Danzig's Star Storm. A bit of a longer shot here in this 8-horse field. Try to bump up that payout. We've seen some big ones here since we've started, and I want to get my hands on one of that so I can get back into this race. You've got a big lead on me.
Yes, well, we'll see what happens tonight. Again, if you haven't been out to the track, what are you waiting for? Free admission, free parking. And if you do want to make a reservation in the clubhouse dining room for that amazing prime rib buffet, you can call the track and make reservations, and more information on that and everything else going on throughout the year is available at AssiniboiaDowns.com. Actually, considering there's no pucks and no hoops tonight, this will be a fun night. Even if you don't get out there, you can always do like we do, bet at HPIBet.com and watch Kirk and Stretch do their thing with the amazing production of the Assiniboia Downs YouTube channel. And instead of taking advice from us, you're wise to listen to them, who are some of the best handicappers around. And of course, he also, Kirk also calls the race. Looking forward to tomorrow for the big program. And don't forget, we will be debuting CFL 110 with myself and Jeff Hamilton at 3 o'clock, right after Winnipeg Sports Talk. So hopefully you can all stick around for that. Brought to you by Garage Living Winnipeg. And again, a big shout out to Pat Kanuga and Garage Living for jumping on board and helping us get this started. If you want more information, you can go to garageliving.com and inquire with Pat. I mean, he is just the best when it comes to this sort of stuff. Is really enjoying the new run. 999-1234 for Pat over at Garage Living. Tell them the boys that you heard about us on WST about those amazing garage projects that they're doing right now for people in the city. Remo, before we go, Manitoba Hockey Hall of Fame announcing a couple of inductees, including our old pal, the Sheriff.
Yeah, the player inductees: Doovie Westcott, Russ Romanuk, Shane Knighty, Brad Maxwell, and Lori Langrell. And congratulations to Kelly Moore getting in the media category.
Kelly, right on.
That's
Congratulations,
awesome.
Kel.
So a number of inductees announced today, MBHHOF on X. So a couple notable there. Former colleague Shane Knighty. I know
it's funny, and you mentioned Doovie Westcott, who had a wild career. He played high school hockey here for St. Paul's, and then went to St. Cloud. Ended up making the National Hockey League and playing for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Ended up playing overseas as well. His late father was actually my godfather. So shout out to the Westcotts and Doovie. We'll have to get Doovie on at some point before the induction ceremony and catch up with him. Great show today. Thanks to Mike McIntyre, Tommy Gazzola, and catching up a little earlier with Tyler Mislawchuk as he trains for Paris. Real fun one today. Tomorrow on the program, we are going to dive into a little bit more Bomber talk as we get closer to Thursday night. Bombers, Redblacks. And we'll also talk some golf. It's U.S. Open Major Week. That means Jeff Feinberg will also get the latest from Edmonton on the Stanley Cup Final as the teams get back to practice, getting ready for a big Game 3 in front of the Oilers Nation on Thursday night. Thanks again to all the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Don't forget tomorrow, regular show, and then bonus content, CFL 110 debuts with Hammer joining me from Ottawa. Other than that, have a great night tonight. If you're betting the ponies, good luck with the picks. We'll need it as well. And good luck to the Fish as they continue their great play. Looking forward to them being back at home on the weekend. For Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Paterson. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Shout out to the podcast listeners. Have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow for a Hump Day edition of WST right here on the Winnipeg Sports Talk YouTube channel.